This wasn't just hesitation, it was humiliation. A top official at the Pentagon couldn't bring himself to say thank you to a gay veteran who served with honor. What follows is a moment that exposes everything broken about how our military treats those it once excluded.
Mr. Sorensen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the Secretary, to the General for joining us today. Mr. Secretary, I'm hopeful that we can come to an agreement that we need both sides of the chambers working together for the betterment of the military. Do you believe that bipartisanship is essential to the mission of our armed forces, yes or no? Bipartisanship.
I think bipartisanship can be a wonderful thing.
Great. Because I didn't come to Congress with political baggage. I was called here because, I believe, and my constituents believe, that we need impartial, bipartisan people to find solutions to complex problems. But today, this nation is being pushed and pulled in so many different directions. I had a constituent this weekend that said, Eric, I don't even know what to believe anymore. Facts don't matter. Conspiracy theories run rampant like brush fires without anyone to quell them. So I'm hoping you can shoot straight from the hip with me. We're almost done. Do you have a targeted number of reductions in civilian personnel in our armed forces?
We have very diligently tried to identify the places where we might need to make changes, but for the most part, it's been a DRP process, a volunteer process of civilians to try to reduce the number for cost savings.
Is there an analysis that supports how you're coming up with these decisions?
We looked at about 8 to 10%, Congressman, but ultimately, everyone here acknowledges that the civilian size of the DoD has exploded over the last 20 years. And so where there are room for efficiencies, we are actively trying to find them and right-size those spots, because a lot of those places are not making us more nimble or faster at what we do. And
what do we say to
about
the people,
but it's the numbers.
Right. What do we say to the people that have strived in their entire life? These are former retired members of the military working as civilians back home. What do we say to them?
Well, almost all of them took a voluntary DRP to separate.
Do you have a timeline for making these cuts?
Like I said, almost all of them were volunteers who themselves decided to retire early.
Okay, I want to reset for just a moment. And I'm going to be honest with you. I learned a lot about military service from both of my grandpas who served and fought in World War II. My grandpa Sorensen was a proud Navy photographer. I have his photos. They're framed above my desk here on Capitol Hill. I learned to be proud of him. And from him, I learned how to become proud of veterans, which is why I want to talk about a different veteran, one who served in the Korean War from 1951 to 55. He served courageously like my grandpa Sorensen. But unlike my grandpa, this veteran was forced to resign from the Navy. I'm talking about Harvey Milk, because he was gay. You see, as a kid, all I wanted to be was the weatherman on TV. I learned that I could have gone into the Army or the Navy to learn meteorology, but someone like me wasn't allowed. They didn't want someone like me, Mr. Secretary. There wasn't anything that I could do to change myself or the way that my nation thought of me. And so I want to keep this very simple. Do you believe that Harvey Milk is a veteran who deserves his country's thanks?
Sir, the decision to rename the ship was...
I'm just asking, do you believe that Harvey Milk is a veteran who deserves his country's thanks? Yes or no?
If his service was deemed honorable, yes.
Yesterday, the Secretary of the Navy was in your seat. He couldn't give me a straight answer. I disagree with your leadership and his, because I believe that every veteran deserves our thanks. We all walk in the footsteps of leaders before us. And you may not find the value in the fact that many of those people are women with different skin colors, different backgrounds, different talents, immigrants, gay, straight, transgender, disabled. You may want to change it, but you can't. Because the America that you and I both serve is a place where everyone has the ability, or should have the ability, to grow up and be the hero their grandpa was. I wanted to do that when I was a kid. We're going back to that time. Gay kids like me, they don't want to go into the Army. They don't want to go into the Navy because you don't care for them. It's happening all over our country. My grandpa taught me never to judge the value of a veteran's service. And I hope, Mr. Secretary, you learn to do the same in your capacity. And you can find it in your heart to make that part of your process. May God continue to watch over our troops, our veterans, and our military families. I yield back.
Gentlemen, yield.
What you just witnessed was more than a tense exchange. It was a defining moment that stripped the political polish off the Pentagon and exposed a core moral failure within the leadership of our armed forces. It wasn't just about Harvey Milk. It wasn't just about a single name etched into the forgotten margins of military history. It was about who we are willing to thank, who we're willing to remember, and more importantly, who we're still refusing to acknowledge. Congressman Sorensen, with quiet force and emotional precision, didn't storm into that hearing room demanding sound bites. He came in carrying the memories of veterans, the values of his grandfathers who fought in World War II, and the deep emotional scars left by a government that once told people like him, gay kids in America, that no matter how much they loved this country would never love them back. And then he looked a Secretary of Defense in the eye and asked one of the simplest moral questions ever posed inside those walls. Does a gay Korean War veteran who was forced to resign because of his identity still deserve his nation's gratitude? Yes or no? No trick, no trap, just a mirror. And what did we get in return? A stall, a stammer, a bureaucratic qualifier, a moral dodge dressed up in legalese. If his service was deemed honorable, the Secretary muttered, as if fighting and bleeding for the stars and stripes somehow wasn't honorable enough, unless you check the right identity boxes. That phrase, if his service was deemed honorable, is where the mask slipped. Because that wasn't just hesitation, that was institutionalized prejudice, repackaged as policy protocol. That was decades of erasure condensed into one sentence. And that's what made this moment so painfully powerful. You could feel the weight of history pressing down on every second. Sorensen wasn't just standing up for Harvey Milk, he was standing up for every veteran who was told their sacrifice was conditional, every service member who served with courage but died without thanks, every closeted soldier who had to hide who they were just to serve the country they loved. And let's be brutally clear, this wasn't ancient history. Don't you dare call it ancient. We're not talking about something buried in dusty archives. We're talking about a government that, for most of its existence, told LGBTQ plus Americans, you can die for us, but you can't be one of us. And even now, after repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, after decades of progress, after so many public declarations about diversity and inclusion, when given the chance to affirm something as basic as saying thank you to a gay veteran, the Pentagon still couldn't do it without hedging. That hesitation isn't just a policy failure. It's a betrayal of the very values this country claims to fight for. It's proof that the rot runs deeper than most are willing to admit. And Sorensen, with unwavering conviction, exposed it all. He didn't have to yell. He didn't need drama. He let the silence speak for itself, and it screamed. This is about more than one hearing. It's about who gets to be honored in America and who's told to sit quietly in the shadows. Because when the Secretary dodges a question like that, it isn't just about him. It's about the system that built him. It's about the advisors who told him to play it safe. It's about the culture inside defense leadership that still clings to the belief that some sacrifices matter more than others. It's about how inclusion is used as a press release, not a principle. It's about how the phrase, "thank you for your service," is still doled out selectively, depending on how uncomfortable your truth makes the people in charge feel. And let's not forget the ripple effect. When leadership hesitates like that, it sends a message to every queer kid wondering if they belong, to every gay, lesbian, bi, or trans person thinking about enlisting. It tells them, you're still other, you're still a question mark, you're still not fully welcome. And that message doesn't just wound, it costs lives, it crushes ambition, it closes doors. Sorensen made it personal because it is personal. His dream of joining the Navy to become a meteorologist was blocked not by lack of skill, not by lack of patriotism, but by a system that saw who he loved and said, not you. And now, decades later, to sit in a chamber built by the very institution that once denied him and hear that same kind of cold ambiguity aimed at another veteran. That's not progress. That's recycling the same prejudice with softer language. So let's ask the real questions now. How many more veterans are we erasing because they didn't fit the mold? How many leaders are still unwilling to confront the history their departments helped create? How many press secretaries, advisors, and decision makers are shaping policy today while holding on to silent bias? And most of all, why is the burden of moral clarity always placed on the shoulders of the few, while the powerful retreat behind talking points and timing? When you serve your country, you should get a thank you. Full stop. When you put on the uniform, your name should carry the same weight in the history books regardless of who you are. But that's not what's happening, and that's why moments like this hearing matter, because they reveal what still hasn't changed. Congressman Sorensen showed us that dignity, doesn't come from the title you hold. It comes from the truth you're willing to tell. He told his truth, and he held the secretary accountable to his. And when that accountability made leadership squirm, when the questions got too real, the secretary chose to flinch instead of stand. That's not leadership. That's self-preservation. And in doing so, he confirmed what millions already fear, that our institutions are still more interested in protecting themselves than protecting the people they serve. So here's the bottom line. If you believe service is service, period, no matter who you are, no matter who you love, then this should infuriate you. If you believe gratitude should never be selective, then you need to speak up. If you believe the military should reflect the highest values of this country, not its oldest prejudices, then now is the time to demand better. Share this video. Make it loud. Make it impossible to ignore. Subscribe for more truth that cuts through the spin. And above all, stay loud, because silence is the ally of power, and no one, not a secretary, not a senator, not a system, is above the Constitution or the promises it made to all of us. Not some of us, all of us.